it up and turn it around. We might have come from somewhere else, but this is where we found ourselves. Welcome to the local show. People you work with, people you know.
Welcome to another edition of The Local Show here on GrassRoots Community Network. Welcome to our Facebook and YouTube audience. Thanks for joining us, guys. Where each week here on GrassRoots TV, we feature inspirational locals. I'm so excited to offer you another first-time guest, guys. He is an innovator, a pioneer, an entrepreneur, a developer, a cyclist, most importantly. Welcoming to the show, Robbie Levin. Welcome to the show, Robbie.
Thanks, Eric.
And we've got Luna in the house, buddy, because I understand you're a dog lover too.
Yep, we got our Pomsky.
There you go. It's our mandatory local show fixture, kind of like we have the leather couch, the table, the retro mic now, and the dog. So thanks for taking your time and your valuable time to join us today.
No, my pleasure.
So so many things we talk about, but we want to talk about more of the focus on your love for cycling, your involvement with spinning. So I want to kind of go back to the early days of biking, because I know when I was like learning how to ride a bike in those first early years, I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We were just like kids bombing around the neighborhood on our bikes, and that was really the kind of the feeling of like joy and freedom. And first of all, where were you born and raised, and kind of what were your first experiences with riding a bike?
I was born and grew up in San Jose,
Okay.
pre-Silicon Valley.
Okay.
It wasn't called Silicon Valley back then. It was a lot of orchards, and I walked to school through a cherry orchard, and it was a pretty open, non-developed area. But the population was still, well over 100,000 people back then.
Okay.
But it was spread out, and there was lots of great places to cycle in the mountains, in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I was about 16 miles from Santa Cruz.
Nice.
So I got my first actual race bike, which was an Italia 10-speed, Campy components, aluminum magnesium wheels. It was considered to be a super light bike at that time. And I bought it at Kmart for $70. I'll never forget, because I had to save the money. And it was $70, and it was, most people were riding either Raleighs or Schwinn's or Clubman's. Those were the big bikes.
Maybe a Huffy. Were those around?
This is pre-Huffy.
Pre-Huffy, yeah. It was kind of like Schwinn back in that time.
Yeah, Schwinn was big.
Yeah.
And I saw this Italian bike, and the name was Italia, and
wow.
I just had to have it. So I bought this bike. And
how old were you at that point?
12.
12.
I was 12 years old. And this bike weighed 26 pounds, which at the time was really light.
Wow.
Steel frame. I just started riding, and I had a group of like 3 or 4 guys, and we used to ride. And on the weekends, we'd go out into the Santa Cruz Mountains, and we'd ride around Saratoga and Palo Alto and Santa Cruz in those mountains. And we were pretty much untouched. There were no cyclists back then. And we didn't have cycling clothes, so we were either in shorts or we were in long pants with the clips on the pants so they didn't get caught in the chain ring.
Right.
And we would ride in all weather. And we had a little rack on the back. And this is kind of, back then it was, it was wool cycling jerseys and wool cycling shorts. There was no spandex back then.
That's right.
But we would go out on Saturdays. We'd do 50, 60 miles on a Saturday.
Road rides.
In the mountains.
On the roads.
Yeah, on the roads.
But mountainous roads. Those are big rides.
Yeah, all mountainous roads. And we were crazy. I mean, there was this one space between Saratoga and Los Gatos where there was this big hill. It was probably, I'm going to say it was 6-7% grade. And big trucks would go back and forth. And we would catch these trucks right at the top of the crest. And then we'd follow them over the crest, and we'd be doing 60 miles an hour behind 12 years old.
You remind me of the scene from Breaking Away right now.
And we'd be behind these trucks, 60 miles an hour, our eyes glued on the brake lights.
Amazing.
Just wailing down, and
wow.
we didn't know any better. And there there were times when we would be in the mountains, like one of our favorite places to go was a place called Big Basin, which was in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And we would go for 3 or 4 days at a time in the summer. And one of my best buddies that I rode with, his parents didn't know my parents. So I would tell my parents that I was going on a 4-day trip with him and his parents, and he would do the same. And we would pack sleeping bags on our little racks, on our 10-speeds, and we would go to the parks where people were camping, and we would tool around in the parks for 4 days. And we'd always meet young girls, and they would be with their parents, and so they invite us to come and eat with them, and we would just mooch off of families and ride around in our bikes. And so we were crazy. We used to
bike touring way before bike touring was even a thing.
Big miles back then.
Amazing.
And then it was probably around the time that I was playing rock and roll after that, and it was probably around the time that I moved to Los Angeles, and I started riding in the Santa Monica Mountains.
Okay.
And I kept cycling during this whole period, and I got into martial arts, and I trained in martial arts for 13 years and just kept riding my bike as kind of cross-training. And it was, they were similar. I mean, they're so leg-oriented. Both of those sports are very leg-oriented. So the martial arts helped my cycling, and the cycling helped my martial arts. And I lived for about 13 years, I lived 5 miles from Pepperdine University on Malibu Canyon Road, just off Malibu Canyon Road. And cycling there in Los Angeles, it was amazing.
It's like a hotbed.
And nobody was cycling then, really. It was a more of an esoteric sport. This is pre-Le Mans.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
So it wasn't that big in the United States. And by that time, we were riding pretty sophisticated bikes at that time,
right.
And the bikes were getting better. I was riding an Eddie Merckx. When he was racing on DeRosa, and then DeRosa, he went in with DeRosa, and DeRosa made the Eddie Merckx bike at the beginning.
Okay.
So now Eddie Merckx is, it's his own company, but at the beginning, DeRosa was making his steel frame bikes.
Okay.
And then and I had met Johnny G in 1981.
Okay.
I was introduced to him because he was doing triathlons, and I was cycling. And I'm not just sure. I think it was 81 that we met.
Okay, let's take a quick break, because we're going to take our only break of the show. I do need to acknowledge my underwriters, and when we come back, you guys, we're going to learn about Robbie's story with Johnny G, the start of Spinning, and so much we got to get to. But like I say, I want to thank our summer underwriters, including Aspen Square, CMC Aspen, Klug Properties, Live Aspen Art, White River Overland, Pickens County Landfill, and Sundog Athletics. We'll go to our only break, guys. We're going to be back, and we're going to set the record straight on who really started spinning, you guys, and so much more, especially for you bike geeks, so don't go away. White River Overland specializes in camper van upfitting and overland outfitting. Catering to mountain dwellers and outdoor enthusiasts, many of WRO's builds are purpose-driven to facilitate and enhance skiing, cycling, camping, climbing, and river adventures. Nestled in the White River National Forest, close to the deserts of western Colorado and Utah, WRO also rents camper vans and accessories. More at whiteriveroverland.com. CMC is preparing the people who make Aspen work. CMC Aspen collaborates with the community, providing skilled workers, future leaders, and problem solvers, meeting our economy's needs, ensuring opportunity and workforce integrity for generations to come.
I'm so passionate about this community. I absolutely love living here and raising my family here. It gives me a lot of pride to share this with my friends and my clients and help them achieve their dreams of owning an Aspen snowmass and enjoying this incredible lifestyle.
Live Aspen Art is a working studio at the base of Aspen Highlands. Come meet the artists and view both finished pieces and works in progress by owner Olivia Dane and visiting artists, or take private art classes offered for kids and adults. Olivia's recent works are also on view at Opera Gallery at the base of Aspen Mountain. For more information, contact Olivia at 970-379-2539 for an appointment or visit liveaspenartgallery.com.
Welcome to the local show. People you work with, people you know.
We're back here on the local show. Thanks for sticking with us, guys. We got Robbie Levin on the show. Again, this guy's, I think you've had 4 or 5 careers, it sounds like, Robbie. You've had your
three big ones.
3 big ones. You had your cycling, and you still are an avid cyclist. Clothing, you were in the clothing industry, which was your main business for many years.
18 years, yeah.
18 years. You've been involved in development. Let's just touch on that really quick. Sorrel Ranch, just outside of Moab.
Sorrel River Ranch, yeah.
Sorrel River Ranch. Tell us just a little bit about that.
Well, after I had my clothing business in Los Angeles, and I sold it at the end of '86, had a management contract till the end of '91. The end of '91, I moved to Utah, moved to Deer Valley, where I'd had property since '79, but I wanted to relocate there, and I wanted to build a resort. So I started looking for property. For one reason or another, I was in escrow on 3 pieces of property, 2 up in Park City, 1 down in St. George, and for crazy reasons they would fall out of escrow. Like one, the guy died while we were in escrow.
Oh, okay.
When it went into probate. But I finally ended up looking at land in Moab, which at the time was becoming the mountain biking, hub of the world, mecca of the world.
Right.
Fell in love with Moab and found a piece of property on the Colorado River. 240-acre historic ranch that had been settled in 1903. There was nothing there but about 100 cows and some barbed wire fence, a couple of old historic buildings. And I went through the process with Grand County, Utah, to get the entitlements to build a resort, and they loved it. So I built the resort there. It was a 15-year project, and I built the whole thing myself. I was a GC and the architect on the whole project. And
amazing.
Then I ran the resort for 8 years. Took me a while to get it open because I had to develop the whole land, all the land, put the infrastructure in, build all the buildings. But the resort was great, really phenomenal piece of property. And I still have a lot there, and I still go and visit.
Incredible.
And the new owner's a good friend, and so anytime I want to go, I have a room and still go and do some road riding up in the LaSalle Mountains.
It's incredible. I've had the pleasure of staying there, and then you sold that in 2008. Is that correct?
2008.
I stayed there. It would have been about 2014, I think, for a friend's wedding. We had an amazing weekend, really beautiful. So, congratulations on that. What a beautiful resort and property. I mean, the area, it is just, it's one of the most beautiful places in the United States.
Yeah, it was a
It's Castle Valley, basically.
Great project. Yeah, just on the other side of Castle Valley.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's shift gears back into cycling, and we were talking about kind of cycling in the early years, early '80s. You're meeting Johnny G in 1981, correct?
81.
And he was racing bikes. And
well, he was doing triathlons at the time.
Triathlons, okay.
He was a trainer, a personal trainer.
Okay.
So he was training a lot of people in Hollywood, and we met. We had a lot in common, So we did some road riding together, and we trained together, and just kind of developed a relationship. And then around '86, he started getting into ultramarathon cycling. So we started training together. I started doing a little more miles because the ultramarathon cycling regime, the training regime, is a little bit more miles than road racing. You know,
Right.
you're pushing the envelope a little bit more, especially on a semi-amateur level.
More longer rides.
Yeah,
I'd
longer
imagine.
rides.
Yeah.
Longer
like all
rides.
days, 6-8 hour rides.
Yeah,
kind of.
less intense as far as the,
Yeah.
you know, as far as how long you hold your anaerobic threshold, your maximum heart rate, so we trained for Ram 87. I was kind of his training partner, and in 1987, before we did Ram, it was actually February 1st. We were on a pretty standard training ride. It was just a 100-mile ride. We would a lot of time do a double on Saturday, do 100 on Sunday, and then do a couple more centuries during the week. So this is 500 miles a week is what I was doing. When he was training for the race, he was pushing it up to over 1,000, 1,100 miles a week.
Whoa.
But I was still working with my clothing company. So, you know, I mean, I'd go out and do 100 miles between 6 and 11. And then go home and shower and get to work at noon. And then I'd
You still had to go to
be at
work.
work all day. You know?
That's a massive day.
So we were on a training ride in 1987, February 1st. I went down in some gravel. And it wasn't a real bad fall. I mean, we were going around a turn. We were talking, wasn't paying much attention. There was a bunch of pea gravel in the road. And I just went down on my hip and fractured my hip. I got an 85% spiral fracture in the head of my femur. And they put 2 steel pins in the head of my femur to hold it together. And the heads of the pins were still sticking out because the doctor said they'll probably be in there for 10 months to a year, and then we're going to take the pins out.
Wow.
Because it was a pretty clean spiral fracture. So he said, but you don't want to go on the road. He said, because those heads are still sticking out. You fall on those heads, you're going to really damage your bone.
Right.
So I had stationary bike at home, and you know, for when it was raining or something like that. And I started doing 3 to 5 hours a day on the stationary bike to recover from my broken hip. So the big craze at the time was aerobics. That's what was really going on. You know,
Right.
Jane Fonda
Jane
out.
Fonda, step aerobics, and aerobicize, and all that stuff.
Right, so, you know, being a professional musician for 15 years, it was easy for me to stay stimulated with music, and I would create these tapes to listen to while I was riding, and I had quite a few tapes because I was riding so many hours a day on the stationary. And while I'm doing this, I'm thinking, what about an aerobics class on stationary bikes? And that's where the idea for Spinning came up. So I kind of made some more tapes, and then around I'd say around April or May of that year, I had just bought a new house. And the house had this really cool workout room that I was using as a martial arts studio. It had wood floor and mirrors in it. I took all the equipment out, bought 12 Schwinn DX900 stationary bikes, which are just like the current spinning bikes. It's just they didn't have a drop bar, handlebar, or anything.
Right.
Put them in a big circle, and Johnny and I, because Johnny was still training for Ram,
Which is the race across America.
Race Across America for
non-cycling.
1987.
Yeah.
And I would program the music. We'd give everybody heart rate monitors, because at the time, heart rate monitors were just coming in, and we were doing zone training.
Right.
And this was early. Nobody was really using heart rate monitors
This
in
is
86.
cutting edge.
It was very cutting edge. CIC, which became Polar, was the company that first made the first heart rate monitors.
Right.
So we would be kind of in the center on a little stage, just like a regular spinning class, and we would do exactly what we would do spinning classes. And we had all these people coming into the spinning classes, and then we did Ram in August of '87. And while we're doing Ram, I was thinking, you know, we should copyright this and do a actual video on it. So we got back from Ram 87. Johnny dropped out about 2,200 miles. I think it was Indiana. He dropped out. He was really hurting. And that's kind of a race that a lot of people drop out in. It's not unusual to drop out.
Yeah, I think most people
But
do.
we came back, and I wrote a script for this thing, and we did this video, which is on YouTube right now from 1987. It says right at the beginning of the video, copyright Robert Levin, Johnny Goldberg. And that was the official spinning kind of video thing. So then we continued to do classes at my house, and Johnny was actually at this point living at my house. I had 2 bedrooms for him, one for him and one for his kids when they came, and because I had a really large house in Malibu Valley. So while we're doing classes, he says, I want to finish the race. I want to do it again. So he had to requalify. So I said, if you want to do it again, because in '87 I was the sponsor. I sponsored the race.
Okay.
And so in '88, I said, I'll sponsor the qualifier and I'll sponsor Ram 89 if you want to. But this time it'll be our second time doing it. We really know how to do it. So we did the John Marino Open. Johnny did phenomenal in the Open. Very strong cyclist, really strong cyclist. And qualified, I think he set a world record for that qualifier in Arizona. And I think it's Tucson, Flagstaff, and back, 500-mile qualifier.
Amazing.
No stops. You just do the whole 500
Wow.
miles.
So you could qualify for the race across America,
right.
so he could do it again.
And then in '89, I did it really right. I put together massive crew, 2 crews, spent about 150 grand on the race. And he didn't want it. Around 2,400 miles, he was ready to drop out again. He was just beat up. And he was going to drop out, and there was nothing physically wrong with him. In '87, he was hurting physically, his knee, his neck, and he had really bad saddle sores, which is the 2 biggest problems in Ram if you're doing it solo, not as a team Ram, because back then it was only solo riders. It's either neck or saddle sores.
Yeah.
Those are 2 of the worst things.
That makes sense.
But we knew about that. We had 2 chiropractors on the crew, 2 massage therapists on the crew, an acupuncturist on the crew. And every time he would get off the bike for even 5 minutes, he would be hand carried into one of the motorhomes, because we had 2 motorhomes. We would shower him in like 2 minutes, change his clothes, fresh shorts, so he never got a saddle sore, because the saddle sore comes from bacteria buildup. These guys are on the bikes for so many hours.
Yeah.
So it was around 2,400 miles. He wanted to drop out, and I said to him, because I was in the chase vehicle all the time. I actually slept less than he did on a Ram. I think he got 14 hours in 9 days, and I got 10 hours in 9 days. So I said, Johnny, if you want to drop out, it's fine. No problem. You know, nobody's going to hold it against you. But I just want you to think about one thing. Just think about 2 or 3 months from now when you're not in any pain, you're not as tired as you are right now, and all of your sports friends come up to you and say, oh, so you didn't finish again, huh? And this thing went off in his head, because that ego that a lot of professional cyclists and a lot of professional athletes have, that ego specifically about their sport, you know?
Yeah.
And that really hit him. And he got back on his bike and he finished the race in '89. So then after the race, things were not real good after the race. We'd been friends for 8, 9, almost 9 years, but some weird things happened which were not necessary to really go into, and we kind of just went our separate way. And I finished my contract with my clothing company in '91, the end of '91. I moved to Utah, and around, I think it was '97, I'm building the resort in Moab, and I see this People magazine article. And I had heard some rumblings about spinning, but I wasn't paying attention to what was going on. And I see this article in People magazine because spinning had gotten so big by '97.
Right.
So he's in People, and right there in People magazine, he says that he created spinning in 1987 after Race Across America. I mean, 1989, after Race Across America. And I was like, what?
And you guys had started these informal classes in '87, 2 years earlier.
And shot the video in '87.
We're already down to just a couple minutes, and I want to see this trailer. So there is a documentary coming up with the true story, when we set the record straight, about spinning, how it was created. And actually, let's just check this video real quick,
go ahead.
Robbie, and we'll be right back.
In 1995, Johnny G released this video of how he created spinning in 1989.
Principles that worked for me, that made me successful, could work for anybody. Once I realized this, I formulated a training program, formulated training principles, and created a program called Spinning.
In 1987, Robbie Levin produced the first spinning video and spinning program.
I came up with this idea, and Johnny and I put together classes at my house. Everybody got heart rate monitors. I did all the music programming. Johnny and I would be in the middle of the class, kind of on a little riser, and that was how spinning got started. In 1987, around, I think it was just after RAM.
He clicked on this idea of having a bike and spinning where it's more of an organized workout.
Create an exercise class that was a lot like the aerobics classes that were out at the time.
We made a video. We made the first spinning video.
The concept of promoting and giving credibility to developing spinning.
I remember one time he said, we're going to copyright this, because that was kind of the next step. And this is after maybe a year and a half of practice.
Mostly my friends were in the video, my son and people that I worked with, and old musicians, and a bike racer that I had trained with from Denmark.
So Robbie, people will see a full documentary movie in the next 3 to 6 months?
It's a documentary short. It's not a
Okay.
full length, but it's a short. Yeah, in the next 3 to 6 months it should be out on some version of social media at least, at very least.
Okay. Now my last closing question, maybe the most important. Were those mullets you had in that video? Because I mean, I almost got one now. I call it COVID head. A little bit short in front, a little bit long in back. And you guys were rocking that 80s
That's the
style.
only proof that it was the 80s.
Exactly. Exactly. You had like metal toe clips and,
Yeah,
if
that's
anything,
right. That's
and
right.
the long 80s hair.
That's right, yeah.
Did you have fun on the show today?
Oh yeah, it's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you for being so humble about it. I'd imagine it's not about money.
No, absolutely
It's
not.
about just setting the record straight,
That's
right?
right.
And getting
That's
the
what it's
truth
all
out
about.
there.
That's what the video is all about.
That's awesome, man. Well, thanks for joining us. Next time we have you on the show, we'll talk about your rock and roll career, which is equally as impressive. So I got parting gifts. I baked you some cookies, buddy.
Well, thank you.
And a little squishy cup,
That's
groovy
great.
squishy we call them, from Pitkin County Landfill.
Thank you.
And thanks so much for joining us on the
Thanks.
show. Robbie Levin, Luna, our mascot. And above all, thank you guys for watching The Local Show. White River Overland specializes in camper van upfitting and overland outfitting. Catering to mountain dwellers and outdoor enthusiasts, many of WRO's builds are purpose-driven to facilitate and enhance skiing, cycling, camping, climbing, and river adventures. Nestled in the White River National Forest, close to the deserts of western Colorado and Utah, WRO also rents camper vans and accessories. More at whiteriveroverland.com.
Celebrating another great summer season by offering up to 25% off their nightly rates. Aspen Square Hotel is the hospitality place, featuring fireplace studio suites and larger condominiums with full hotel-style services in the center of downtown Aspen. Aspen Square is proud to support The Locals Show. Sundog Athletics, Aspen's Adventure Sports School, is your opportunity to experience one-of-a-kind guided adventures and gain new skills to experience the thrills of mountain and road biking, fitness hiking, and Aspen's exclusive canoeing adventure. They can be reached at 970-925-1069, and fresh updates can be found at Sundog Athletics on Facebook or sundogathletics.com.
Welcome to